So take a sci-fi action film and blend it with Norse mythology and wrap it into the legend of Beowulf. You've got this fairly under-recognized gem, starring Jim Caviezel, Ron Perlman, and Jack Huston, by the name of Outlander. When a spacecraft crashes in 709 AD Norway during the Iron Age, two figures emerge from the wreckage: Kanan, an alien soldier, and the Morwen, his mortal enemy. Learning where he is, Kanan makes use of his advanced technology to implant the Norse language into himself in order to integrate into this culture. He then quickly sets out on the hunt, but sees that the deadly Morwen has already started cutting a path of destruction through the Norse lands. Amidst this, Kanan is captured by the warrior Wulfric and taken to the fortified village of King Rothgar. There they question him about who he is and what destroyed the nearby settlement. However, the space-faring word can only equate it to a dragon, which they all find difficult to believe. Yet when Kanan is taken with a hunting party to find the Morwen, he helps slay a gigantic bear, which earns the respect of the king, who treats him as an honored warrior. Bonds also soon form with Kanan, the man who aspires to one day be king, and the impulsive yet respected Wulfric. Meanwhile, Kanan develops an honest relationship with the king's daughter Freya, who he confides in, and tells of his part in the attempted Morwen genocide, which ultimately cost him the lives of his wife and child, and knows that this Morwen is still out there, ready to destroy everyone and everything in its path. After attempts to trap the bioluminescent beast fail, and a battle with the combined forces of rival Viking gunner results in a further loss of life, Kanan sees a chance to meld his advanced technology with ancient Viking weaponry in order to kill the Morwen before it destroys these noble and proud people. So the film of Outlander saw its North American theatrical debut on January 23rd, 2009, and it already hit a couple of territories throughout 2008, such as Latvia, Lithuania, Kuwait, and Taiwan, and a couple of festivals like Spain, Switzerland, and Germany, and rolled out to a couple other territories throughout 2009, 2010, so didn't really had a very focused sort of release strategy, and even the U.S., its distribution was unceremoniously handled by the Weinstein Company, and trickled out to a few dozen theaters in a very limited theatrical release, so it was a film that didn't have the very best of financial fortunes because worldwide grossed only about $7 million off of what was at least a $47 million budget because they just couldn't get a very strong thing behind them, and that stemmed all the way back throughout the entire development and pre-production of the entire film, where director and co-writer Howard McCain had kind of developed this entire story throughout the 90s, kind of taking the legend of Beowulf and kind of giving it much more of a sort of sci-fi origin in a certain way, having this beast and this warrior come down from the sky and stuff like that, and have that sort of integrated element of the entire thing. As he goes around through the entire 90s, kind of hooks up with co-writer Dirk Blackman, who kind of helped refine and expand the story a little bit. They were actually going to end up shooting the whole film in New Zealand with Weta Workshop and Weta Digital doing all the effects work. Kind of following in the same Lord of the Rings sort of thing that was going on with Peter Jackson. But eventually the funding fell out of the whole thing. And oddly enough, they kind of get hooked up with Barry M. Osborne, who was a producer on the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They kind of get hooked up with him and send it pictures. They kind of at least got the $47 million put together for the film and ended up having to shoot the whole thing over in Nova Scotia in Canada instead of going all the way to New Zealand, and not being able to afford Weta Digital, stuff like that. Now that they've won all these sort of big Oscars, stuff like that, they couldn't quite go that route, so they had to kind of find other avenues and find things that would be a little bit less expensive for them. And certainly that sort of budget cut kind of affected having them cut certain sequences they planned to do for the film and certain other things that weren't quite possible to be done with the amount of money and amount of time they now had. And so it was kind of an interesting whole thing where it's like, yeah, it had very big ideas for the whole thing, big sort of lofty type of things, and had to scale it down to a certain degree, and then the entire release strategy kind of goes up in smoke in a certain way, and the whole film doesn't get much promotion, doesn't get much of a way to kind of push itself out into people's visibility and stuff like that to really kind of get it kind of established. And Howard McCain had kind of directed a couple fairly unnoteworthy type of feature films before this, but at least had some experience. And him and Dirk Blackman after this would actually co-write the third Underworld film, Underworld Rise of the Lycans, where in the pantheon of Underworld films, it's definitely still at least one of the better ones in the franchise. But McCain and Dirk Blackman put this whole script together and really, especially with Howard McCain as the director here, they really do a really good job to blend these entire genres together. Kind of mix them together in this sort of way where it's such a great type of thing to see. Like, it kind of has those sort of elements like a Predator or something like that, but also all these little things you kind of put together from Norse mythology to have that sort of sensibility of the time and the period and the culture, stuff like that. And kind of blend these things together very nicely in a certain way. It just smartly integrates all the sci-fi stuff in with like mythological lore and stuff like that to kind of take like alien beasts and this warrior from another place and kind of meld it into sort of ethereal type of things here and there, and certain things that are kind of out from the darkness and stuff, pits of hell, stuff like that. Interesting little concept that can be perceived differently from a different culture. To have all this stuff kind of blend together in such a way where you have Jim Caviezel's character of Kanan telling these stories where he's trying to relate them to the people of this era and this age and this culture, stuff like that. So he doesn't like say, like I'm an alien from another planet. He kind of weaves a story that has enough of a relatability to what they know to understand what he's been through. I think Howard McCain really kind of brought together a lot of good things to present this sort of genre to everyone and take this story and take the elements they want to from Beowulf and a few other homages here and there they had throughout the entire film with stuff like Jaws or Alien or stuff like that. They're going to have a little bit of sensibility about what to take and what kind of works in this sort of genre. I think all this stuff really does come together very well, and the production design in this whole film is such a great type of thing because, oddly enough, I was looking at the credits on this whole thing, and it was handled by David Hackle, who had been a production designer on the Saw films, actually directed Saw 5, but he comes together this whole thing as a very good quality production designer because everything put together for this whole thing, between the Norse mythology stuff with the entire village they have there, that kingdom, a great sort of tree that kind of comes up in the middle of the court there and everything like that. Because in that culture, they kind of had this whole thing where they felt like the entire world was kind of held up by this giant tree. So they found this one tree in this entire forest, this one giant one, and decided to build the entire village around it. That interesting type of thing, how they approached those ideas and kind of integrated into the design work of the entire film, was very, very smart. And it's very much well reflected in all the sci-fi stuff. How it has become this smooth, sleek type of thing, but still has a little bit of an alien sensibility to it in a certain way that feels a little bit off here. There's a little bit of contrast between just the technology and the sort of more primitive type of stuff, but it has its own identity. And both cultures are given such a equal sense of life and history and detail to all the craftsmanship put into the production design. And it's such a great thing, and because part of the film is that the fact that this Norse mythology is from an abandoned seed colony of Canaan's people, and so it's like a very interesting type of thing how they kind of kept little things like that in mind to keep slight little continuity in that regard. So kind of cool little things, just like overall the production design of this film is really, really solid and very exceptionally inspired, put together a lot of good quality towards it. You can definitely see the money involved with this aspect of the entire film. And just adding to the lush depth of these entire worlds is a score from Jeff Zanelli, who had come up under Hans Zimmer, Harry Gregson Williams, Steve Jablonsky, and John Powell before starting doing scores where like he did like Secret Window and Disturbia and the fifth Pirates of the Caribbean film. But on this film, he does a really smart type of thing. He does a really good thing because him and Howard McCain really synced up very well in this whole thing because Zanelli was very enthusiastic to get into the project, the entire idea of the whole thing, because you could bring in all the real sort of grounded sensibilities with all the Vikings. And then you could have all the sort of almost like dreamlike synthesizer alien stuff with the entire Morrowind in the entire film. Then he brought in the militaristic sensibilities with the score, with the hero of Kanan here, because it just all blends so well. And you do have there's a few beats listening to the score itself. Like, it's got a little bit of a Howard Shore Lord of the Rings thing in there just for like a few notes. Not like an intentional type of thing, but you can see that there's definitely an influence there in a certain way that is kind of going off of stuff that is very contemporary at that point in time and has very much fit this sort of general genre they had going on in this whole film, but it puts together so many interesting type of things. Again, electronic stuff and the orchestra and all the different things that come together in such a great way to create a very powerful score that just has maybe not the most distinct sensibility about it all, but it all comes together, brings all these different elements of the genres together and mixes it together so well, just as Howard McCain did with the entire melding of the different things in the story and the plot and all the different characters and the different ideas here. The score does the exact same thing and brings all the action and the drama and the thrilling qualities in our film really well together in this whole thing. I think Zanelli, and though he's not the highest recognized type of composer, he came up under some really exceptionally talented people and brought a lot of those skills onto this film and really delivers, and I thought was a very strong piece of work. It is a good listen, but unfortunately, it only got a limited release, same as the film. But I think it was La La Land Records back in like 2009 or something like that. Only like maybe I think it was like 1,500 copies. So good luck tracking it down anywhere. It's not available on any digital streaming service. I'll have to kind of find something a little bit off the beaten path to kind of grab a copy of it here and there if you really want to hear what it sounds like. But it does come off very, very well, and Zanelli does a really solid job. I think him and McCain really nailed something very strong with that quality here, and kind of interesting type of thing that there were a couple people who were definitely linked to this project at certain points in time, including director Rennie Harlin, who had done Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, Die Hard 2, Cliffhanger, and The Long Kiss Goodnight, and furthering our Lord of the Rings connections with the entire film. Carl Urban was confirmed to be attached to the film at a certain point in time. Now, he was apparently going to be in the role of Kanan, but I think there was a little bit of a scheduling setback. He came to a conflict with him. So he ended up doing the film Pathfinder with director Marcus Nispel, which, unfortunately, I don't think it became a very good commercial or critical success for him, but they didn't miss a mark here going with Jim Caviezel because he is such a very exceptionally good, talented actor. I've seen so much of his work from films like Frequency and The Count of Monte Cristo, and he did the CBS series Person of Interest, which was fabulous. I absolutely loved that series. And of course, Passion of the Christ as well, a very notable film in his pantheon of things, but he's got such a great way of presenting himself on screen that even the filmmakers said that he has a very ethereal sensibility about him, a certain aura that he brings onto the screen. I think just adds something more to the character of Kanan, that he's more than just a regular man. He brings something a little bit more to the table just in how he carries himself on screen. He has such a very understated sensibility about how he presents himself on screen with the way he delivers lines. He's not very big and verbose. He's not larger than life. He's a very down-to-earth type of character in a certain way. You can draw you into the scenes, draw you into the emotion and the drama and the sensibility of the story that he's trying to convey to people as he's relating his life experiences to everyone else here and the tragedies that he befell and the blood on his hands from trying to eviscerate the entire Morrowind species, all these different things. A lot of complexities in the character there. And I like so much the quality that he never treats them as lesser. Even though he's a guy from space and he's got all this advanced technology and all this type of stuff, he has a kinship. He always views them with a certain sense of respect and honor and nobility. He sees the type of people they are. Doesn't matter the technological contrast between the two of them. They're kind of cut from the same cloth. They're both warriors. All of them are warriors in this whole thing together, and they're trying to work together. He's never clashing against him. He's always trying to work towards the common goal of everything, to wipe out the Morrowind, do whatever it takes and try to protect people. They all have the certain same sensibilities. I like so much how Caviezel brings that to the screen. It kind of draws those elements into himself and commands the different scenes, but never really steals anything from anyone else. He's always very much on a collaborative sensibility to work within the scene with the other actors to bring the best out in the entire film. I like the fact that he goes through all these trials and he has to prove himself to the Vikings and prove himself to King Rothgar. These different things that kind of show his mettle and show that he is someone to be respected and trusted and become one of them. And that grows throughout the entire film. He bonds with these characters, especially with Wulfric, when they're doing this entire wonderful scene where they have this big open hall and they're having the big feast and all this different stuff, and they go off and do this sort of game they play with shields and whatnot. They gotta race around between one another kind of as a kind of a competition and good-hearted fun and everything like that. So it's a scene that even the director and the filmmaker said they could have cut it out because it doesn't really progress the plot, but it progresses the characters. I think that's extremely important that they still recognize that, where in the entire film, apparently they were under the gun to get the film to a certain specific length. They could not make the film go any longer than necessary, so when you watch the film and get to the end credits, that's why a lot of the end credits zoom by so fast that they didn't have an extra second to spare. So the fact that they looked at certain scenes and saw that these were important scenes to build the characters, to build the relationships. It was a very smart type of thing to build that, because it's extremely important to see how Kanan comes into the graces of these characters and builds that sort of camaraderie and builds that loyalty to them and everything like that. So I liked so much how the emotional bonds pulled together from Caviezel's performance, how they wrote the character of Kanan here, to have all these emotional beats and whatnot to just make the film feel like it has a purpose to the character. Why it has such a certain resonance for him to be here in this time with these people and find something more for himself after he's lost so much and had gone through so many different things to get to this point in time. Caviezel does a fantastic performance. I just think he nails so much to bring that character all the way through the entire film. Handles all the physicality absolutely fantastically. They said that he tried to bulk up a little bit. He didn't get like super jacked up type of guy, but he was in very physical fit shape, and he brought the qualities he needed to. He didn't focus so much on the muscles. He focused on the quality of the performance here, but he still wanted to look at as much of the part as possible. So I like Caviezel's commitment to a role in that regard. He really put everything else on the table and delivered such a great performance to really make it the centerpiece of this entire film. And joining him in the supporting cast here is Sophia, Myles, who I'd previously seen in Underworld. Not the last Underworld reference I have coming up here, but she played the conniving, conspiring vampire Erica in that film. I thought she did a wonderful job of it. And she does a completely different style of performance here, doing an equally great job of it. I think she does a fantastic job as Freya, the daughter of King Rothgar. She does a great job of this entire thing, just bringing such a fiery, strong-willed woman to the screen here that still has all the tender warmth. She's this character who wants to defend her people. She wants to stand up strong, not be sort of a pushover type of woman or whatnot. She wants to stand strongly at the head of the entire village here, the entire kingdom. I like so much of that quality. She does such a great job with all the physicality and standing up for herself, being very assertive about what she feels and what she wants to do here. But she always has these wonderful, emotional, heartfelt scenes with King Rothgar and also with Kanan as well, as they build this entire bond and learn more about his backstory, where he came from, what he's dealing with inside of himself. They have these wonderful scenes that come together with such beautiful, fantastic sensibilities to them. I just think she did such a great job to bring such texture and weight to such an empowering and heartfelt role here that just stands up so well against her male counterparts, between just an actress and also as the character within the story. I think it holds up extremely well. She shows such quality here. I thought she was just absolutely fantastic. And of course, we've got Jack Huston here. Guy's gotten a little bit of notoriety here and there, but I think this was the first time I ever noticed him. I thought, this guy was really damn good in this film as Wulfric. This kind of guy who's going to be the king eventually, but he hasn't quite earned the stripes for it. He's kind of still the kind of brash, eager type of guy who's a little too much jump to conclusions, kind of celebrate the victory too soon. He thinks that, what's terrorizing them is just some big grizzly bear or something like that, and once they slay it in this cave, they kind of have all the big celebration, all that type of stuff, and they think it's all done. But obviously, Kanan knows better. He's got more of that insight. He's got that depth of experience behind him about the Morwen, knowing much more about it, and King Rothgar's always got to be a little bit of tempering him down, kind of guiding him here and there, and let him know to think a little bit with a little bit more wisdom, a little bit more forethought about certain things, look with a little bit more perception into the situations. I think Huston does a great job to bring a lot of charisma to the entire character, a lot of just fun energy overall. I think he clicks into the role and clicks into the entire ensemble here really, really well to make Wulfric a very integral part of the entire story here as he goes along, and has to be kind of side by side with Kanan, going into the danger and going up against the Morwen, all these different things, going into all these situations and kind of standing eye to eye with everything like that right against Kanan here. I think they did a really good job to kind of start out with the conflict there, as they don't know each other and they think he's obviously the Outlander of the entire film, being Kanan, and kind of getting into the entire thing where they start to build that trust, build that camaraderie, all these little things develop as the film goes along. I think Jack Huston really delivers a really solid performance here that I think really carries a lot of good things. They're very important. Even though the arc is not like anything you haven't seen before, we need to still deliver the performance to a certain standard and a certain quality that is worthwhile to give that credit there. I think he did a really solid job towards it. And of course, Sir John Hurt, the guy who's passed away at this point in time, but he kind of came on the whole film. It was like the general kind of like log line of the entire film was kind of like, seemed kind of silly to him and stuff like that. That sci-fi movie with Vikings, stuff like that. It seemed kind of silly. But once he eventually sat down and kind of looked through the entire script, it was like he was very impressed by it. And they were very much like super pleased and so privileged to have an actor of his quality and his stature step up into the film here as this really good role of King Rothgar. And though, again, it's not a character or kind of a thing going on with the entire character that you haven't seen before, but he does such a great job to be that guiding force, to lead with wisdom, and a little bit of heart, and a little bit of that intellect as well. He's always has that sensibility, not being impulsive. He always has that elder statesman type of quality to him, that he always kind of sees the perception of the situation and kind of sides in the way that doesn't go to like bravado or anything like that when he's kind of dealing with the situation between like Kanan and Wulfric, even though Wulfric has certain objections about certain things, about not like we're going to follow this guy, this Outlander, this guy we really don't know much about. But Rothgar steps out, like, you are right to a certain extent, but I believe Kanan. I believe that what he gives to this entire situation is the right way to go to hunt down what is destroying our people and all that type of stuff. It's a really good, measured, even-handed performance he puts in with a lot of little wit here and there. He always got a little bit of a gleam in his eye when they got the entire thing where they're in the big hall and they're having all the celebration and having the stuff. He takes joy in his people's triumphs and their pleasures and all these different things. When they have something to celebrate, he's proud of them as well. So I like so much how they put all that together for King Rothgar. Just John Hurt, absolute legend of an actor here, and did a wonderful job overall to really bring that quality to this character that I think really nailed something that the film absolutely needed that kind of gravitas and sort of seasoned quality with the character here. Really good stuff. And we got Ron Perlman, who's always is like 24/7 badass Ron Perlman here as character of Gunnar here, the kind of guys, kind of the rival of the entire kingdom here, because Wulfric and Gunnar had this kind of altercation at a certain point in time, and now Gunnar's kind of out to get him and stuff like that. A lot of complicated sort of machinations, but Ron Perlman is awesome. Is putting this whole thing together where he said he was like the first Jewish Viking. He had a really nice job. He did not a whole lot in the film, but you like the fact that like, oh, they're talking about me constantly for like the first 45 minutes of the entire film. Then I show up and I do battle and start smashing people's heads in and stuff like that. It did a really goddamn good job here. Ron Perlman always delivers. Really good type of stuff in a much smaller supporting role here, but he delivered really well. I like so much him being in the film. And just the entire cast, it really structured a lot of really good characters here. Really, we're very fortunate to get all these really, really fantastic actors involved in this entire film. With all the financial setbacks and maybe some other production problems and things not going quite to the extent that they wanted to, having to cut certain things out of the film due to the limitations and restrictions they had. They still nailed it with a lot of great performances that really hold the entire film up very strongly. I think everyone here brings characters that are written very, very well, draws emotion out, gives them texture and dimension and depth, and just really delivers everything on a very high-end quality. I think everything just hits so well with this cast. And the guy making the film actually looked very good on film is cinematographer Pierre Gill, who didn't have a whole lot of notable credits, a lot of experience, but not a lot of things you'd notice aside from like the Wesley Snipes film The Art of War and the Rennie Harlan directed The Covenant. Anything else, stuff you probably really haven't heard of, but it brought a lot of value into this film. He brought a lot of production value to make sure that all that wonderful production design looked good on film, lighting it and angling it and shooting it in such a way to make it look absolutely fantastic. All the camera movements, all the subtle lighting he puts into the great hall there with the king and the tree and all that type of stuff, everything put out into the open and stuff like that, it comes together and captures the scenery and the landscape so very well and taps into the low horror, the creepy darkness and stuff like that, and the action sequences come together so very well. Nothing loses so much geography unless they're trying to do something that's a little bit more stylistic, trying to kind of trick things out in the entire thing when they go into the cave and they think they're going after the creature that they're hunting and whatnot, but it turns out to be the bear, and they're kind of playing with light and shadow and quick cuts here and there. They kind of fool you out a little bit as the actual characters don't actually see what they're going up against. So, like, they use that kind of trickery in a certain way that follows along with the perspective of the characters as well. So you're never really clued in too much of what the characters don't already know or how they're seeing it beyond what you're seeing. So I like so much how that comes together with the general cinematography. Film just comes together with a very high quality sheen to it. But there is a little bit of a problem that kind of goes from the cinematography into the visual effects and sort of the post-production color grading the entire film. So I think the film could look better than it does now. Because there's certain things with the fact that there's a lot of elevated black levels in the entire film. For a film that's kind of working with a bioluminescent creature that hides out in the darkness, and you only see it when it really wants to be seen, to have it use that bioluminescence to draw its prey out and stuff like that. You think you'd have like these really deep, inky blacks in the entire film that you wouldn't see anything more than just a pitch blackness until it lights up here and there. How are they handled the color grading? Really kind of shortchanged a lot of things. It really affected a lot of the digital composite shots in the entire film in certain points in time that really stand out not very well. Now, maybe this is just something that affects like the home video transfer. I'm not entirely certain unless I actually saw like the film projection on the screen, but this is a time where they would have put it on a 2K digital intermediate, and that would have been going right onto the entire disc format, stuff like that. So just a thing that's like, it just kind of affects things in a bad way, and some of the color grading in certain places doesn't let the cinematography shine as well as it could. Like, again, when they're in that big, great banquet hall, whatnot, it's all really kind of flat, just warm filter over the entire thing. There's not a lot of like color contrast coming out in certain scenes here and there that I think could look a little bit more lush or detailed in a certain way to just give a little bit more color texture to certain things. There's just certain sequences in the film that just kind of go with it like a complete wash, and it kind of degrades the overall quality of the cinematography, I feel. I think it just does that, and also negatively affects some of the visual effects shots in the entire film, where all the visual effects were handled through a company in Toronto called Spin FX, and also Fantasy 2, who had done stuff all the way back to the Terminator and Terminator 2 and Alien, stuff like that. Been around forever, done really, really admirable work. And a few other companies kind of jumped in here and there as they kind of had to delegate some other things out. But the visual effects are mostly very good. But there's a few points in time where it's like, that doesn't look quite so good. There's some points like there's certain green screen shots, like when they're out later on in the entire film, after they kind of done some battles here and there, and they're going out in the lake, and Kane's going down to retrieve some metal from his ship to kind of forge into a new sword and stuff like that. They were actually shooting things on like a tank on a backlot or something like that, and they're doing a green screen composites. Like, there's just something off in the entire thing and how it comes off. Just like there's certain qualities in like green screen effects don't come off as well, but when you listen to the commentary track and they point out certain things where they actually did digital effects, it's like, I didn't even include that this was a digital effect in the entire film. There are certain things they did with landscapes and extending certain things here and there with certain sets and stuff like that. They're completely seamless. But there's some points in time where, like, the Morrowind creature doesn't look quite as convincing. There's certain points in time where it looks a little undercooked with its rendering and its texture mapping and certain other things. It's a little spotty here and there, but on the most part, the stuff looks good. And the guy who actually designed the Morrowind was Patrick Tatopoulos, one of the best production designers in the industry. And he also directed Underworld: Rise of the Lycans. And he did a production design for a couple of the previous, like, 2 Underworld films had done. So with Zack Snyder and all these different guys. He is one of the top-tier production designers in the business. And he did it for free. He designed this creature for free for Howard McCain. And did such a great job. It's just like, I like so much with the Morrowind. that they created something that does have a certain alien sensibility that could also be viewed in a certain mythological sensibility. It doesn't look so alien that it doesn't seem to fit with our sort of terrestrial terrain. It still has a certain sensibility. You can kind of weave it back and forth between like alien and mythological kind of creatures, stuff like that. And they gave it a personality, gave it character traits, gave it an intellect. Like so much, because you kind of lose that sometimes when you get into CGI creatures that are kind of like just doing all this type of stuff. They kind of lose the sensibility of a personality. Stuff we had where back in Alien and the Predator film and stuff like that, when you had actual guys in the suits doing the entire thing and bringing a certain performance to the entire thing. They really were very specific about making sure that they showed a certain quality with the Morwen, especially the big one, and of course later on when it gives birth, and you got the other one running around being savage and being very vicious and very quick on his feet. I like so much that there is that sort of sensibility between the two different versions of it, the older one and the younger one, and all these different things. They really, really did so well, and they did a great job with the visual effects to make sure that they had a certain sense of physics. They had a weight to it. It didn't seem like it kind of flung around without gravity or something like that. It really made a very conscious decision there to make sure that they obeyed a certain sense of gravity and physics, stuff like that. So it's all these little things that really show the skill and the talent and the artistry of these visual effects houses to make sure they have all these things in place to make sure it kind of integrates with the entire world. I like so much how that comes together, and just like how they do like some digital matte paintings in the entire film where they have go down into the Morwen cave and then all these bodies are laid out all over the place. It's really creepy and shit like that, but it was all put together digitally. It's a really good job. So on the most part, the visual effects hold up very well. But like I said, some of the color grading kind of robs it of a certain quality that you can use that dark, inky sensibility about the entire film to kind of hide and kind of smudge around the edges of some stuff that doesn't quite look as good as it could, especially with the limitations of the budget and certain things they couldn't really put as much time into. You could use a little bit more of a darker sensibility in how the film was graded to kind of hide those little limitations here and there. So I think if this thing got maybe like a UHD or whatnot, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But if someone did like an HDR pass on the thing and regraded it to a certain degree, I think it would look really, really exceptional. Kind of fix some of these issues with the entire film. But I think it came off in a very good way to make sure that the vision Howard McCain had and the collaborations he had with all these artists to kind of design the world and the creatures and all these different things, especially the scenes we get on the alien planet when Kane's having these flashbacks after they kind of done this entire sort of almost genocide of the Morwen race. The shot looks absolutely phenomenal. Anything you'd see in any big budget picture stands up so extremely well. So there's some points where the visual effects look absolutely brilliant. And sometimes they don't look quite so good. So maybe that's different houses doing different things, or just the limitation of what they had available to them to make sure they could get as much as they could. So just like there's just on the edge of like they could, if they just had a little bit more to work with and did a little bit more work on the post-production end, it could look really fabulous. But on the whole, this film really does some great stuff. I just like, it again, being such a film that got buried in distribution, no real marketing. People who took the helm of this thing in terms of putting it out in theaters and stuff like that really didn't give much of a shit. And that's kind of par for the course for the Weinsteins and fuck them, all that type of shit. But this one deserved better. I think it could have been a cult film in a certain way. Again, I don't know if it, with the limitations it had with the visual effects, stuff like that, I don't know if it got a full wide release, it would have got like $300, $500 million at the box office. But I think with a little extra exposure, a little extra push behind it, it could at least been a kind of an interesting sci-fi cult film. It could have gotten a little bit of a following here and there. So it's kind of interesting looking around. A lot of people have done a lot of talking about this film on YouTube here, stuff like that. So kind of nice thing. I was like, well, you should give this film a little bit of a spotlight to a certain degree, because I just like all the stuff the film goes through. Again, you got all these things going on with Kanan, where he's got the entire thing with the genocide, and he's got blood on his hands because of that, and then because they missed a couple of Morwens and they thought everything was safe, and he left his family behind and they got slaughtered, and he's got to deal with that entire thing and having to sneak aboard their ship, and now it's losing this other place. Like it's on him. He can't see another village get destroyed because of what he did or what he failed to do. he has to take that upon himself and carry that burden around, and again, find that redemption, find that salvation. I like so much how the film goes through such a rich arc with his character. I just like so much all the beats they hit with that, and all the action. As it says on the kind of cover of the entire film, Predator meets Beowulf, and there's definitely those Predator elements in the entire film. You're hunting around in sort of the forest or the jungle or stuff like that, fighting this thing that's almost invisible in the darkness. All this stuff really comes together very well for a film that really deserves to be checked out and kind of given a little bit more visibility overall. I think that everything comes together very, very well, how they build arcs and kind of come together with a really nice, cool concept here that really comes together very, very well. With a few shortcomings, like I said, with visual effects and a few other technical details, but score is great. The cast is fantastic. Direction for Howard McCain is really solid. I think the screenplay was very, very smart and put together things really, really well. So maybe not all the dialogue is like completely high grade type of stuff. There might be a few things here and there that seem maybe a little cheesy here and there, stuff like that. But I think it finds the fun in the entire concept without kind of degrading the drama of the entire film. So it finds that middle ground, that balance and everything like that, to maintain a heart and a soul of the entire film while still delivering some really cool action and sci-fi elements to it. So I think Outlander is definitely one that is worthwhile to check out and find, because maybe right now when I'm recording this, you can find like Amazon or something like that, but as time goes on, who knows where things end up going in the streaming realm. But you can still get it on disc. You can still find it on Blu-ray, DVD, stuff like that. So I definitely recommend it, guys. If you've seen Outlander, let me know what you feel about it, because it's just one of those films that just, again, got kind of slid under the radar of everything like that, and kind of got a little bit forgotten and kind of dismissed here and there, because Howard McCain's gone off and done a couple other things here and there, but not a whole lot of anything that really could prop up a major sensibility or whatnot. But definitely let me know what you guys think about it. And of course, there's always the Patreon. If you guys really enjoy what we do around here, between my reviews, the retro video series, the commentary tracks, your contributions to Patreon help keep things going around here extremely much. Everything like that. And of course, beyond that, you guys watching and interacting and liking and sharing and all these different things, especially if you're a subscriber, everything helps. Everything helps to expand things and build things out and keep things going around here. I extremely appreciate you guys for taking the time, watching all this stuff, enjoying it and interacting with myself and Steve and Trent, all these types of things. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much, guys. So take care. Bye-bye.